العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. So أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم يا إخوتي وأخواتي الكرام. Welcome to the second part of the art of seeking knowledge. So in the first part, which we completed almost 2 weeks ago, we covered some very important issues. So we covered the importance of seeking knowledge. We learned some of the adillah, some of the evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah pertaining to the importance of seeking knowledge, such as the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fid din." Whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes good for, yufaqihu fid din, then Allah gives this person fiqh in the religion. And also the statement of Allah, first and foremost, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ, that Allah raises in rank those of you who have knowledge and those of you who have been given iman and faith, and other similar verses and ahadith. We also learned the importance of the student of knowledge following a system and a methodology when seeking knowledge, and that whoever wishes to seek knowledge, then really this person has to follow a system, has to follow the same method that the ulama and the scholars that preceded them followed. We learned that without a system, then this person will really, maybe they will be able to accumulate some bits and pieces of information here and there, but they really won't have any ta'sil ilmi. They won't really be they won't be firmly grounded. And we basically learned the four categories that a person usually يمر عليها, that the person usually covers when they are starting to seek knowledge. So for the purposes of those who didn't attend the last lesson or the last lecture, I'm going to quickly recap what we learned, and then we will continue from there. So we learned firstly the problem, and then we mentioned the solution to that problem. So the problem that many students face, or many people who wish to embark on the quest of seeking knowledge, is that first and foremost, this is the tariqah, and this is the common path to seeking knowledge. So here, obviously, you have the talibul ilm, you have the student who goes to the teacher, and then the teacher teaches this student a book, a matan, and then this matan will have an objective. So this student needs to know the objective of the matan that they are learning from this teacher in order really to be successful. This is the tariqatul muthla, and this is the way the ulama and the scholars throughout history have been learning. The problem that some of our brothers and sisters face is they don't know who to go to. They have no idea which teacher to learn from, okay? And the importance of this is summarized by a famous statement of Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Sirin from the Tabi'un, who said, إِنَّ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ دِينٌ فَانْظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. He said, indeed, this religion is, this ilm or this knowledge is your religion. So make sure you scrutinize the person that you are learning from. That doesn't mean that you basically have suspicions of your teachers. It just means that you have to seek knowledge from someone who is qualified, just like everything else in life. If you want someone to build a house for you, you go to someone who is an architect, someone who's qualified, someone who knows what they're doing. If you're ill, you go to a qualified doctor. If you want to learn mathematics or any subject, you go to a qualified teacher. Knowledge is not different to all of this. In fact, it's more important rather, because knowledge is what you will use to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of us know that Allah created us in order to worship Him. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn and the ins except for my worship. We are unable, and it's impossible for us to worship Allah without knowledge, without knowing how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's impossible, okay? And this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Seek knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. So we have to seek knowledge in order to worship Allah. And we cannot seek knowledge without having a qualified teacher. So the problem that many students face is they don't know who to take knowledge from, or rather, even if they have 5 or 6 qualified teachers, they go to a teacher who is teaching a book that is above their level. So let's say they go to this teacher, and this teacher is teaching مثلا, let's say he's teaching بلوغ المرام مثلا, or from Subul al-Salam, and this student has not even read and understood or memorized the 40 ahadith of Imam al-Nawawi. This is a khalal fil manhaj. Yani this is khalal, this is the wrong methodology, and this is a flaw in this student's system of learning. So this is one problem, okay? The next problem is, even if they were to identify the right teacher, the student will maybe go to a teacher, or the teacher may teach this student a book that is above this student's level, okay? And even if they were learning the right book, the student needs to know the objective of that book. Because it doesn't matter, you have a matan. Now, many of you have asked, what is a matan? So a matan is a comprehensive, it's a concise summary of a particular science or a fan. Okay, I'll show you examples after I finish this presentation. So an example of a matan, for example, in Tawheed is the matan of Thalathatul Usul. An example of a matan in the science in Hadith is Al-Arba'un al-Nawawiyya مثلا. An example of a matan in fiqh is matan Abi Shuja' مثلا, وهكذا. It's basically a scholar who is firmly grounded, who is a alim. This scholar has summarized the science, a science for the beginner student. So when the scholars author mutun, they author it for students as a madkhal and an introduction to a particular science. Okay, so it's really important that the student knows the objective of this matan, the level of this matan, okay, before they even start the matan. Okay, many students, the mistake that they make is that they begin reading a matan, they read one chapter of the matan, just one chapter, or a few pages of the matan, and then they have hundreds of questions in their head, or lots of questions in their head. And these questions may be answered in the matan itself. So they then go to a teacher or an alim or a scholar or whatever, or someone, and then they start to regurgitate all of the questions that they have and just want everything answered for them in one go. That ma yumkin hada, that's impossible. Okay? Yes, you, even in this lecture now, many of you, some people are listening to this lecture and they already have questions in their head. So because you already have those questions in your head, you're not actually listening to what I'm saying. So I want you first and foremost to put your questions to one side, intadhiru, isbiru, be patient and just listen. Just listen attentively. Maybe the questions will be answered in this lecture, inshallah ta'ala. So it's not all about just asking questions. If you look at the Quran, the Sahaba, Ridwanullah ta'ala alayhim, in the Quran, the instances, Allah recorded the number of times that the companions asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam questions. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ وَيَسْتَفْتُونَكَ فِي النِّسَاءِ. Allah says they ask you about the spoils of war. They ask you about the phases of the moon. They ask you about issues pertaining to women. The scholars, they say there are about 14 places in the Quran where Allah says that the companions ask you about this. So it's not just about asking questions. It's firstly understand. أولاً ifham. Once you understand, inshallah ta'ala, once you read the matan from beginning to end, then you can go back and then everything will be clearer for you. Okay? So when you start a matan with a scholar, with a sheikh, you should firstly read the matan. Okay? From beginning to end. Just read it, go through it, tasaffah. Familiarize yourself with some of the abwab, some of the chapters in the matan, then go back and then read it to a sheikh, and then everything will be in context. Right? So this is the mas'al, this is the problem. Now the solution, also, afwan, before I get to that, there's also another problem, which is friends. As a student of knowledge, you have to choose the right friend. So I remember, listen carefully to my words. I said right friend. I didn't say the righteous friend. The righteous friend is for everyone. Every Muslim should have righteous friends. This should be the aim of every Muslim. But a student of knowledge doesn't just look for righteous friends. The student of knowledge looks for the right friend, because it's sometimes even a righteous friend may not be the right friend for you when seeking knowledge, or the right companion for you. Because what happens is, another problem that students face is they have a friend who basically they follow. If this friend goes to a teacher, one teacher, or this friend is mathalan above them in understanding, or is more advanced than them, they just follow that person, that friend. Then this person takes them to a lesson where a matan is being taught, a book is being taught, and this book is again more advanced for them. And again, they have no idea what they're learning. Okay, they just go with the flow. Also, this person could introduce them to another teacher who teaches from another matan, who again, same problem. Right? So it's very important as a student of knowledge to choose the right friend, someone who basically knows this, has a tariqah and has a system or a methodology of seeking knowledge. So the solution to this is, awalan, know that in every fan, in every science, there are principles. Okay, in every fan, in aqidah, there are principles that the ulama rahimahumullah ta'ala have documented in their works. In tawheed, there are principles. In fiqh, there are principles. In lugha, there are principles. So in every science that you are learning, know the principles of that science. How do you know these principles? Obviously through the al-mutun al-ilmi, and this is something that you will learn in stages. Also, طبعا if you follow these principles, all of these problems disappear. Also, make sure you follow the correct system for every matan. Okay, every matan, when you start a matan, it's like you're entering a maze. Okay, so you have to go through the maze on your own and get to the other side. So you have to open the matan and read it. Okay, read it. So going through a maze, obviously, it's daunting and it's difficult, and obviously you're looking for the exit, right? So you have to go through the maze. Once you get through the maze, then you come back and read the matan again. And then obviously you're now more familiar with that maze. You know exactly, at first method, you will know 10% of the issues in the matan. Then the second time you read it, you will know 20%. Then the third time you read it, you will know 30%. وهكذا, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's a طلب العلم, seeking knowledge is a lifetime. You spend your life doing this. Okay, so just because you finish thalathatul usul doesn't mean you never ever go back to it. Just because you finish Kitab al-Tawheed doesn't mean you never go back to it. Just because you finished the 40 ahadith of Imam al-Nawawi doesn't mean you go back and revise it. You have to go back. Okay, so you have to follow the correct system for every matan. Also, it's important for you as a student, if you do all of this, all of these mashakil and all of these problems disappear. Also, it's important for you to minimize your distractions as much as possible. We live in a time and in an era where it's full of distractions. So it's really important that you minimize all of your distractions as much as possible when studying. طيب. Here we looked at this chart also. Okay, this is the chart that I call the student maturity model. And to be honest, this chart is just there as a guideline for you, just for you to have some awareness and know exactly where you stand. Okay, so we have the outsider. When someone starts to seek knowledge or once has the desire to seek knowledge, then this person, usually this person has the following attributes. They have limited Arabic, usually because of their lifestyle and how, because they're not accustomed to seeking knowledge, they only spend maybe a few hours every few weeks. It's difficult for them to recite the Quran. It's difficult for them to understand basic concepts in basic principles, basic knowledge-based concepts. So this is a person who is just interested. It's like someone who, as we say now, someone who's just window shopping. Someone who's just looking outside the window and he's interested in what's inside the shop, but doesn't really want to make the effort to go the extra mile. Okay, but they're interested. So this person has a very high risk of abandoning knowledge altogether. Okay. Then we have the second level, who I call the pretender, someone who pretends to be seeking knowledge, whether intentionally or unintentionally, doesn't really make a difference. But in reality, they really aren't seeking knowledge. This is a person who spends years in conferences, goes from one conference to another. They really have khair in their hearts. All of these people have khair. And all of these people, inshallah ta'ala, we're not going to say anything about their intention. It's not about their niyyah. I'm not talking about the niyyah here. I'm not accusing anyone of having ill intentions. But what I'm talking about is the end result here. Because it doesn't matter how good your intentions are, if you don't follow a system, if you don't follow the correct methodology, then your intentions will not save you. Your intentions alone will not make you firmly grounded. So this is important. Just like when you're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that whoever wants to worship Allah or perform a specific act of worship, then they need to come with two conditions. Al-mutaba'a wal-ikhlas. They have to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sunnah in this particular worship. And number two, they have to be sincere in their worship. So if someone, for example, now prays dhuhr, 5 rak'ats, mathalan, which is obviously wrong, this is dhuhr is 4 rak'ats, their intention is for the sake of Allah, but they didn't follow the method, the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so Allah will not accept it from them. Similarly, knowledge is the same. So similarly, I'm not talking about the person's intention, I'm talking about the end result. So this person, the pretender, is someone who spent years going to different conferences. Every time there is a conference advertised, he or she is the first person to attend. Allahumma barik. Okay, and this person has zeal, the hirs, the diligence is there, but the methodology is missing. They jump from book to book. They have no idea where to begin. This is a person who wants to seek knowledge all at once. Okay, Al-Imam al-Zuhri has a famous maqul, has a famous saying. He says, "Man rama al-ilma jumlatan dhahaba anhu jumla. وإنما العلم وإنما طلب العلم على مرور الأيام والليالي." He says that whoever wishes to attain knowledge all at once, then this person the knowledge will depart from this person all at once. If a person wants to accumulate knowledge all at once, then it will depart from this person all at once. This is how things go. This is the sunnatullah ta'ala fil kawn. So this person wants to learn mathalan everything in a few conferences, okay? And they want to pick up everything in one go. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, in his book Al-Jami', he says, Jami' Adab al-Rawi, he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he mentions a story of a person. Actually, this is a scholar. He says, he mentions the story of a scholar who started, when he started to seek knowledge, he went to all of the lessons, all of the lectures, and he went to all of the teachers and everything that they taught all at once. And this was a person who wanted to learn everything all at once, until it became too difficult for him to absorb all of that knowledge in one go. And then he decided that seeking knowledge was not for him. So this person decided that, khalas, I'm not destined to be a student of knowledge. And as a result of this conclusion that he came to, he abandoned knowledge altogether, until one day he was sitting and he saw some water trickling down to a huge boulder or rock. And he saw that the water actually affected, the trickles of water, the droplets of water actually made a dent in the boulder, and it affected the actual sakhra. So then he said to himself, this was, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to guide him back to seeking knowledge, and he used this as a ibra, and he said that knowledge, he said to himself, knowledge, he said that my heart and my brain isn't as thick as this rock and this boulder, and knowledge isn't as soft and more intricate than this water that has affected this boulder. So then he went back and he started to seek knowledge, and then he became an alim and a scholar. So the moral of this story that Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi mentions is that if someone if someone tries to learn everything all at once, then they will abandon all at once. And this is the number one reason why these two groups of people abandon knowledge. It's too difficult for them. They say to themselves, I've been going to all these conferences for 6, 7, 8 years, and I can't see any improvement in my retention, in my memorization. I can't see any improvement. So I'm going to abandon knowledge. I'm not going to continue. They either say this bilisani halihim or bilisani maqalihim. Either they acknowledge this with their tongue and they actually acknowledge it and confess, that's it, or they acknowledge it in their actions. You never see them coming to conferences again. They just leave and that's it. They just drift away from seeking knowledge. And alhamdulillah, there's still khair in them. Alhamdulillah, they're practicing. All of this is good, but they just leave knowledge altogether, because the problem is they weren't following a methodology, okay, and they never saw any improvement within them. Right? So then this person again has a high risk to abandoning knowledge, which basically takes us to the third level, and this is the level that we have to first aspire to, the student of knowledge, talibul ilm. Okay, so the talibul ilm, the student of knowledge, is someone who has the right attitude first and foremost. Okay, you can get to this level pretty quickly. You can get to this level in just a matter of months. Wallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fadlullahi wasi'. Allah's fadl and his mercy and bounty is spacious, alhamdulillah, and wide. And you can get to this level in a few months. Okay, it's all about having the right attitude. Think of your quest for seeking knowledge as someone who is going on a journey. Okay, on a journey. So you've packed your bags and now you want to go on a journey. This person, the outsider, doesn't know the destination. Okay, the pretender doesn't know the destination. So they're just walking and basically just going and following some people, and they're just walking and they don't even know the destination. Can you imagine someone going on a journey and not knowing the destination? So obviously these two people are going to get lost. Sooner or later, they're going to get lost halfway. They won't know where they're going. They'll be tired and then they'll just go back home. Whereas here, the student knows the journey, knows the destination. He knows the objective. He or she knows where they are going to. So because of this, it's all about the attitude. It's very highly unlikely for this person to abandon knowledge, because at least they know the stages of seeking knowledge. Once they complete one marhala, one stage, they know that they'll go to the next stage, and then they'll go to the third stage, so they can see a system in their head. Okay, their thought process is not flawed. So this person usually is someone who places great emphasis on the Quran, recitation, memorization, understanding, everything. This person is someone who has at least or is in the process of memorizing al-mutun al-ilmiya, some mutun. Okay, very good level of Arabic, able to read. Yani maybe their Arabic isn't strong, but their level of Arabic is satisfactory. Okay, it's very difficult for me to give you examples here, but their level of Arabic is satisfactory. They are able to understand, at least recite. They can read because their recitation of the Quran is good. They are able to read al-mutun al-ilmiya. They're able to follow some Arabic lectures, even though they may not understand fully. They are people who place more emphasis on learning al-mutun al-ilmiya than conferences. Conferences are good. Now, when I say conferences, in conferences you can learn al-mutun al-ilmiya. It depends on the conference, obviously. But what I mean to say is that there are some conferences that are based on lectures, for heart softeners, and these are really important. And it's important for the student of knowledge, the firmly grounded, the alim, everyone to attend these lectures. But it's important for you to know what you are going to achieve from these lectures. If someone goes to these lectures thinking that this is the path of seeking knowledge, this is the methodology of seeking knowledge, and by going to these lectures alone, I will become a student of knowledge, then obviously this person is wrong. Okay, this is khata. But if someone goes to these lectures hoping to boost their iman, hoping to, as a encouragement to continue on the path of knowledge, then this is obviously important. But at least this person will be able to use this lecture as like a catapult, catapulting him or her towards even greater things. So this is the student. Then you have the firmly grounded. And obviously this is the student maturity model. This is not we're not talking about ulama here and scholars, we're talking about students of knowledge. This is a person who's developed their critical thinking skills. They are able to read, understand scholarly works, scholarly books. They're able to deduce rulings from evidences. They have the ability to impart knowledge, وهكذا. So this is what I call the student maturity model. طيب. This is where we reached 2 weeks ago. So I want you to think of this here as basically your mind, okay? And on the right here, you have a mas'ala or masail ilmi. You have issues or knowledge-based issues, okay? And this is you on the left. You want to get to here. You want to understand these issues. How are you going to do that, okay? First and foremost, you need to know you're not going to be able to understand them properly without a methodology and a system. You're not going to be able to understand them. Even if you go and ask a scholar, Ya Shaykh, what is the ruling on this? And he says halal, haram, wajib, mustahab. This is not knowledge. This is you learning, you being given a fatwa. Anyone can learn this, okay? But how the scholar actually reached that conclusion, this is knowledge. So you won't actually know this methodology, these masail ilmiya without following a method and a system. But how do you get to a method and a system? How do you get to this? How do you learn what the methodology and the system? First, you have to know that these methodologies and this tariqa al-manhajiyya is based on qawa'id and principles, depending on the matan that's being taught. Second, you have to know that for every issue that you learn, it's not about the number and the quantity of issues that you learn. It's about the quality of your understanding and your ability to interpret these issues effectively. This is the most important thing. So it's not about quantity, it's about quality, okay? So the first thing you have to know is when you're learning a mas'ala ilmiya, you have to first visualize and picture the issue. This is really important. So picturing the issue, is probably the most important thing when learning a mas'ala ilmiya. So first and foremost, if the issue is about مثلا the fact that Allah is high and he's above his thrones. He's above his throne. You have to picture al-ulu. ما هو العلو? ما هو الاستواء? The different types of al-ulu. علو القهر, علو الذات, ulu, sifat. What do these three things mean? What are the differences between these three things? So you have to visualize the mas'ala. With regards to fiqh, let's say, for example, you're reading a mas'ala. Let me give you an example. What is the ruling on the musafir, the traveler, praying behind the resident? So you want to learn this issue. What is the ruling on the traveler praying behind the resident? So there's no point you learning this issue without actually visualizing it. So visualizing it, I mean, you have to know what is a traveler. Who is a traveler? What is a muqim? Who is a resident? Yani praying. What do we mean by praying? Do we mean voluntary prayer? Do we mean the obligatory prayer? إيش نقصد يعني? Also, is there any ijma' in the issue? Is there a consensus in the issue? So as a student of knowledge, you first have to understand and visualize the mas'ala, the issue, okay? And when we say the ruling on the musafir praying behind the resident, what do we mean by this? The scholars, if you look deeply, what they mean by this is the musafir, is the traveler allowed to shorten their prayers when they are praying behind the resident? Let's say a traveler prays, يعني, a muqim, we all know that the person who's resident in their land, they have to pray fully, 4 rak'ats of dhuhr or asr. طيب? And the musafir, we know that the musafir is given the concession to shorten their prayers. Okay, so what happens if a musafir, if a traveler prays behind the muqim? Does the musafir complete 4 rak'ats just like the muqim, or does the musafir shorten their prayer and contradict the salah of the muqim? This is what the scholars are saying. So also, is there an ijma' in the issue? The ulama, if you look carefully in this issue, there's an ijma' that it is allowed, generally speaking, يعني, for the musafir, for the traveler, to pray behind the muqim, to pray behind the resident. This is allowed. This is bil ijma'. Okay, so as a student of knowledge, before you even read about the issue and read the khilaf or read the aqwal or the adilla, you have to be able to visualize the mas'ala. So you have to picture the issue. Okay, then once you visualize the mas'ala, you have to learn the hukum of this mas'ala. What is it? It could be a mas'ala aqadiyya, it could be a mas'ala in tawheed, it could be an issue in fiqh, usul al-fiqh. What is the hukum? When I say hukum, what is a hukum? ما هو الحكم؟ do we mean حكم وضعي or حكم تكليفي? Do we mean haram, halal, mustahab, or do we mean sahih and batil? What do we mean by hukum? So you have to know all of this, يعني, before you even, and knowing this, يعني, what I'm trying to tell you here basically is that you have to basically order in your head your thought process when learning a mas'ala. It can't be chaotic. You can't jump to the hukum before you visualize the mas'ala. Okay? You can't jump to the dalil before you visualize the hukum. طيب, how can you jump to the dalil of a mas'ala if you don't know what the mas'ala is, or if you don't know what the hukum is? Okay? Yeah, صح, the hukum is based on the dalil. But if you're reading a matan, especially in fiqh, the author will tell you the desired opinion in the madhab, and he will tell you the hukum. And chances are you won't even get to see the dalil, except maybe in the sharh. طيب? So this is the order. You have to visualize the mas'ala. What is the hukum? What is the dalil? طيب? So the question now is, how do you do all of this? As a beginner student of knowledge, someone who's accustomed to just going to conferences and listening to lectures, كيف تعرف هذا? How do you even get to this? So this is where basically a matan comes in, al-mutun al-ilmiyya. Okay, this is why you need a matan. So as someone who wants to get to this, the only way you'll get to this is through a matan. So you pick up a matan, okay, and your intention has to be correct. And when I say intention here, يعني النية. You have to do this first and foremost for the sake of Allah. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين. Sincerity is a pillar in every worship, and seeking knowledge is no different. So you have to have the right intention. Okay, your intention has to be purely for the sake of Allah. Forget about giving da'wah. Don't think about giving da'wah for now. Some people, they are thinking of giving da'wah before they've even sought knowledge. Okay? Inshallah ta'ala, there will come a time when the ummah needs you. Whether you are a brother, whether you are a sister, whether you are 20 years old or 60 years old, the ummah will always need you. Okay? And there will come a time when this happens. But right now, that shouldn't be your main focus. As a student of knowledge, your focus should be just to seek knowledge, not to basically become famous or tweet about how you are seeking knowledge. And this is also another point I wanted to clarify. Do not document how you are seeking knowledge on social media. This love and obsession with documenting everything on social media, I'm going to this sheikh today, I'm going to this teacher today, today I've read this book, tomorrow I will read that book. Ya akhi, ماذا تركت لله? What have you left for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is worship. هذه عبادة. Just like you don't document how many raka'at of qiyamul layl you've prayed, don't document your seeking of knowledge. If you want others to be to follow in your footsteps and you want others to be encouraged by it, then all you have to do is open Sir A'lam al-Nubala, the biographies of the Salaf, and mention how they sought knowledge and some of the sacrifices that they made to seek knowledge. Because wallahi, yani our sacrifice compared to theirs is absolutely, it's nothing. So make sure that this is really important. Yani subhanallah, the intention is really important. Yani Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, ما عالجت شيئا أشد علي من نيتي لأنها تتقلب علي. I have not tried to cure something more difficult for me to cure than my intention, because it keeps changing. Even Al-Imam Ahmed, he was asked and he was said to him, هل طلبت هذا العلم لله? Have you sought this knowledge for the sake of Allah? Al-Imam Ahmed, the great Al-Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam Ahl al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah fi zamanihi. He was asked this, Amir al-Mu'mineen fil hadith, are you sincere in your seeking of knowledge? Do you know what he said? Did he say yes? He said, أما لله فذاك عزيز. As for me and saying that I did this for the sake of Allah, then this is difficult for me to say. وَلَكِنَّهُ شَيْءٌ حُبِّبَ إِلَيَّ فَطَلَبْتُهُ. However, this is something that was made that I loved and I sought it. This is the ikhlas of the ulama, and this is the sincerity of the ulama that we have to adhere to. And subhanallah, in As-Sir A'lam al-Nubala, Al-Imam al-Dhahabi, he mentions in the seerah of Abu al-Hasan al-Qattan, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Abu al-Hasan al-Qattan, he said that I was in Basra. I was once in Basra, he said, وَأَظُنُّ أَنِّي عُوقِبْتُ بِكَثْرَةِ كَلَامِ أَيَّامِ الرِّحْلَةِ. He said that I أُصِبْتُ بِبَصْرَ. He said I became ill and some calamity afflicted me in Basra. And I think the reason this calamity happened to me was because of my constant talking and speech when I was traveling to and fro, when I was seeking knowledge, and when I was in my phase of seeking knowledge. What does he mean? He means that he used to talk about knowledge, and he used to basically teach and talk about knowledge, and when he was seeking knowledge. Al-Imam al-Dhahabi, subhanallah, this tells us that when a student of knowledge is seeking knowledge, في أيام المرحلة ينبغي لطالب العلم أن يختفي. When you're seeking knowledge, and this goes for the speaker, myself, and for everyone listening, I'm not above all of this. But when we're seeking knowledge, the person who's seeking knowledge should try to remain hidden as much as possible. Hide yourself as much as possible. Because wallahi, there will come a time when the people will distract you with their constant questions and they're asking you this and that. Hide yourself as much as possible. Here, Abu al-Hasan al-Qattan, he's saying, subhanallah, the reason why this calamity befell me while I was seeking knowledge is بِكَثْرَةِ كَلَامِي, because I talked a lot. So what do you say of subhanallah, some of us who go on Twitter every day saying I went to this sheikh, and then even posting videos of themselves in lessons? Subhanallah, do they not fear for themselves that they will fall into riya, showing off? Subhanallah, when riya and this disease, which is, we're not accusing anyone of, the reason why subhanallah riya and showing off is something that يعني Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something it is considered from shirk, الشرك الأصغر, is that, and it's from the major, obviously it's major, it's more major than the major sins because it's in the level of shirk. Okay, and the reason why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam feared for us to fall into a shirk al-asghar, it's because it's impossible for anyone to advise you to abandon riya. Okay, no one can come up to you and say to you, Akhi, ittaqillah, fear Allah, do not show off. No one can come up to you and say that to you. But people can say to you, Akhi, aw ukhti, I see that you're doing this particular sin, so fear Allah. But when it comes to showing off, no one can actually advise you. You are alone with the shaitan on this. Only Allah can save you, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why, subhanallah, Imam al-Dhahabi, commenting on this, he said, Sadaqa wallah. Imam al-Dhahabi said, Sadaqa wallah. By Allah, he is truthful. فَقَدْ كَانُوا مَعَ حُسْنِ الْقَصْدِ وَصِحَّةِ النِّيَّةِ غَالِبًا يَخَافُونَ مِنَ الْكَلَامِ وَإِظْهَارِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ. He said, by Allah, he is truthful in what he says, because the Salaf, our righteous predecessors, the scholars, although they were righteous in their intention, although they had the right intention, they feared speech, talking. They feared to even talking about issues, they feared it so much. And they feared to manifest their knowledge because they were afraid for themselves. They feared that if they spoke about knowledge, people will say, they will become famous or common amongst the people. And they didn't like this. Subhanallah. And Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, speaking about the intention in his book Al-Fawaid, he says regarding how some students of knowledge are afflicted, he says that the alama or the sign of a student of knowledge is ill intention, that they don't have the right intention. The best sign and alama to look for, he said, أنه كلما زيد في علمه زيد في كبره وكلما زيد في علمه زيد في فخره واحتقاره للناس وحسن ظنه بنفسه. Subhanallah. He said that these students of knowledge, or people who are engaged in seeking knowledge, that you will know that their intention is corrupt, because every time they are increased in knowledge, they are increased in arrogance. And every time they are increased in knowledge, they are increased in their self-amazement. They are amazed with themselves. And they are increased in how they belittle the people and how they think highly of themselves. And this is one of the greatest diseases that could befall a student of knowledge. If this disease befalls a student of knowledge, then it's as though this person is khalas. And this person, it's very, very difficult, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy upon them, for them to come back. Because you have to realize that when a person seeks knowledge, and they are a student of knowledge, the first, if we go back to the previous slide, the student of knowledge, the more knowledge you have, the more ignorant you should feel, and the more humble and you should feel. This is what should happen, not the opposite, subhanallah. So the right intention the person should have the right intention. Also, once you have this, then you reach a methodology and a system, and you have your final objective. So your final objective in all of this is to have the correct understanding for this method. Okay, and you're not able to do so until you follow a routine. Okay, so when I say routine, I mean even in your day-to-day life, even weekly, monthly, whatever, you follow a routine, and also you learn the pattern of behavior or the pattern of that particular alim or scholar. So let's say you read a matan, Thalathatul Usul, and you finish it. It's like you've crossed one maze. And then that scholar has another matan, and you'll notice that in the second matan, you're accustomed to this scholar's way or method of writing and the words that they use. So it's like you're following the same maze, but only slight differences. And the third matan and hakada, and so every time you finish one matan, the maze becomes even more complex, but you're able to, inshallah ta'ala, you're able to, with the help of Allah, to traverse that path without much difficulty, because you know what you're doing basically. Okay, so you have to follow a routine. And the final objective is correct worship. All of this means nothing if you don't if you're not doing it to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the intention. Okay, so all of this is basically all of this is meaningless without following the correct methodology, without following the correct path. وهكذا. طيب, so you have to correct your worship, and then inshallah ta'ala you will understand al-masail al-ilmiyya. So this should be your thought process. طيب, so then the next mas'ala, or the next phase, so this is the first phase. Phase 2 is basically you have to know, so going back to this, you're visualizing the issue, you know the hukum, what is the dalil, then you have to know wajhul istidlal. Okay, يعني how is the proof, how is the ruling, the hukum, deduced from the dalil. So let's say, for example, we're talking about an-niyyah, the intention in مثلا in wudu, okay, or purification. When you purify yourself and you make ablution and wudu, you have to have an intention, يعني, صح? So then you read the verse that the hukum, basically, let's say this is the issue, the hukum, so we've visualized the issue of the intention, the niyyah. We know that the niyyah is something that occurs in the heart. And we know that the niyyah, the intention, is not something that is said with the tongue. So for those people who مثلا say, the muwaswisun who say مثلا when they're praying dhuhr, Allahu Akbar, أنوي أني أصلي صلاة الظهر 4 ركعات, and we know that this is wrong. Okay? And the intention is something that occurs in the heart. In fact, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he says that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it obligatory upon us to do an action without any intention, it would have been impossible for us to do so. So the intention is there, whether it's for the sake of Allah or not. That's basically the challenge. We have to make sure that every worship that we do has to be for the sake of Allah. So for the purposes of this example, the intention in the wudu is having an intention prior to starting the wudu. So then you learn the hukum of this. So we learn that the hukum, according to the majority of the ulama and the scholars, is that it is wajib. The intention is wajib. So then we ask ourselves, what is the dalil for this? And then we look, and then we find in the matan that the dalil is, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. O you who believe, if you stand in prayer, then if you intend to stand in prayer, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, then wash your faces and your arms up to your elbows, وهكذا. And al-ayah al-ma'rufa, the ayah that talks about the wudu. Right? So this is the dalil. However, in this dalil, we don't know how the ruling, which is wajib, how is this ruling deduced from this dalil? So this is the wajhul istidlal. So we learn, مثلا, as an example, we learn that يا أيها الذين آمنوا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here makes a command, إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا. If you wish to فاغسلوا, يعني, if you wish to intend to stand in prayer, then make wudu. This is what Allah is saying. So here we know that the command that Allah gives indicates to an obligation. So this is just one example, brothers and sisters. Okay, it could be any issue. Okay, it could be shirk, مثلا الشرك الأكبر. What's the hukum of shirk al-akbar? طبعا هو shirk. This is the hukum. So it's haram, obviously, it's shirk. What's the dalil? And we know the dalil. There's many adilla. إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء. How is the dalil deduced? وهكذا. So every mas'ala, whether it's in aqidah, tawheed, fiqh, usul, everything, you have to follow this methodology. طيب. Is there a khilaf in the issue? Okay, this is the second issue. Is there an ijma' or a khilaf? We need to know. Also, what is the rajih? Yani, as a student of knowledge, you don't really need to know the khilaf, to be honest. This is more if you're a student who's now, it depends on the matan that you're learning. So some mutun will mention the khilaf and some won't mention the khilaf. The majority of mutun won't even mention the khilaf. So is there a khilaf? Is there an ijma'? This is something that you need to know. What is the rajih? What is the desired opinion? Also, when you're reading a matan, you have to also place emphasis on memorization. If it's difficult for you to memorize a matan, then what you can do is you can focus on reading it many times until it becomes easy for you to memorize. So just repetitively reading it again and again. Also, again, monitor your intention. So the intention, even this is basically في المسألة العلمية, يعني even in the issue itself, you have to constantly monitor your intention and make sure that you're doing it for the sake of Allah. Otherwise, all of this is going to be in vain. You're going to be someone who gives all of this effort and not get the reward from Allah because you did it for other than Allah. So you have to monitor your intention. So it's difficult for you to monitor your intention if you're documenting everything for everyone to see. If you're documenting all of everything you're doing, how you're seeking knowledge, what book you're reading, which sheikh you're going to, where you are even, it's difficult for you to monitor your intent. You're just making things harder for yourself. Okay, so make sure that you monitor your intention when seeking knowledge all the time. Also, when you're reading a matan, look for a pattern in the matan. What's the style that the author uses when authoring? In the matan itself, does he begin first with does he مثلا begin with the dalil and then the hukm, or the hukm and then the dalil, وهكذا. And just look for a pattern. So also, as the firmly grounded person, inshallah ta'ala, student of knowledge, you have to, like I mentioned, choose the right friend. And this friend must be a friend who follows your exact same, applies everything that you do. So this can't be a friend that leads you astray in seeking knowledge. They have to also follow the same system. Make sure that you ask for help. Okay? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask for help. You're not alone. There are, alhamdulillah, you ask for help. Ask those who are more knowledgeable than you. Ask those who are equal to you in level. Ask those who are beneath you as well in knowledge. Those who are less advanced than you. Ask them as well. So this is important. So you can ask your friend, or you can ask a scholar or a sheikh. Okay, you can ask your friend or ask a scholar or a sheikh. طيب. Also, once you get to the level of the firmly grounded student, you will develop, as I mentioned, your critical thinking skills. So you, inshallah ta'ala, will have the ability to research specific topics and issues. Okay, so you're not going to be reading from a matan, you're going to be reading and checking encyclopedias. If it's a fiqh issue, you might be checking a mas'ala or researching a mas'ala in al-Mughni or in al-Majmu' or a mas'ala in al-Muhalla, ibn Hazm, وهكذا. So you have to develop your academic writing skills and your research skills as well. The same method applies. You have to have the right intention. You have to follow the same methodology. You have to follow all of this as well. And you have to make sure that when you're presenting an issue or a mas'ala, okay, you begin with the Quran, the Sunnah, and then you begin obviously with the early ulama and the early scholars. Some students, when they talk about a mas'ala or issue, they say, the first thing they say is, Sheikh Fawzan said this, Sheikh Abbad said this, and they mention some of the contemporary scholars now that are alive. Allah yahfazuhum jami'an. Okay, this is a khalal fil manhaj. This is a flaw in how they present the material. How can you mention an issue, مثلا, that the Sahaba spoke about? How can you mention the contemporary scholars now before mentioning Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali? Before mentioning the Tabi'un? Before mentioning the four Imams, Al-Imam Ahmad, Al-Imam Shafi, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa? Before mentioning them? Obviously, we're not talking about fatwas here. If our scholars have mentioned the fatwa on something and they've said, Sheikh Fawzan مثلا says this is, if it's a contemporary issue, if it's min al-nawazil مثلا, issues that مثلا did not exist before our time. مثلا now this epidemic, the coronavirus epidemic, that's forcing people to remain at home and pray the Salatul Jama'ah and Jum'ah at home. This obviously we go back to the ulama, our scholars, but obviously they derived this, they came to this conclusion based on principles and qawa'id. Okay, so if you're someone who is a firmly grounded person, you're not a layman, okay, it's good, it's imperative that you go back to the scholars of old first. And first and foremost, after the Quran and the Sunnah, obviously, is the Sahaba, and then the Tabi'un, and then the Atba'u Tabi'an, وهكذا. And then afterwards, finally, you can say, and from the contemporary scholars, Sheikh Ibn Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, said this, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh Al-Albani, Sheikh Abbad, Sheikh Fawzan, they all said this, وهكذا, and mention them. هذا لا بأس. There's nothing wrong with that. طيب. So the same thing applies. So through research and academic writing, you will learn how to study on your own, autonomous learning. Inshallah ta'ala, once you've completed many mutun ilmiya, that doesn't mean you shouldn't still have a teacher, but at least now you'll be at a level where you're able to continue seeking knowledge on your own, because you know the system, you know how it works. You have to make sure that you are accurate in your speech and your literature. This is really important. When I say accuracy, I mean ad-diqqa fi al-naql. Yani make sure that the ahadith that you quote are authentic. Make sure that you use every dalil in its context. وهكذا. So this is very, very important. And you have to also learn how to interact, not read, just even interact. Yani the ulama and the scholars, they have a way and a methodology of researching. So it's important. Yani this is really important to know and to be able to interact with scholarly works. And again, yani this covers so this covers everything. Okay, you have to, this will allow you to have the correct understanding and follow a routine. And again, I have to emphasize the ibadah and the worship. You're doing all of this to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, in Jami' Bayan al-Ilm, he mentions an athar, a narration from Abu Qilaba. Abu Qilaba was the student of Abu Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani rahimallahu al-Jami'. And he said, إذا أحدث الله لك علما فأحدث له عبادة. He says that if Allah gives you some knowledge, then make sure you act upon it and worship Allah in accordance to that which you've learned, even if it's once. And subhanallah, some of the scholars of old, Al-Farra, he used to say, and this is also in Jami' Bayan al-Ilm, he said, لا أرحم أحدا كرحمتي لرجلين رجل يطلب العلم ولا فهم له ورجل يفهم ولا يطلبه وإني لأعجب ممن في وسعه أن يطلب العلم ولا يتعلم. So regarding understanding, Al-Farra, he said, I do not have mercy upon anyone like I have mercy upon two types of people. A man who seeks knowledge and has no understanding. What does he mean by that? No understanding, and it doesn't follow a system. He doesn't have any understanding because this person is someone who doesn't follow a methodology. Otherwise, he would have understood. And another man, وَرَجُلٌ يَفْهَمْ, a man who has understanding but doesn't seek knowledge. And he says that I am amazed, truly amazed, when I see someone who is able to seek knowledge, who has been given good intellect and understanding, but doesn't seek knowledge. Subhanallah. So it's really important that the person makes sure that this follows a methodology. And subhanallah, Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in a book called Rawdatul Muhibbin, he mentions the stages of a student of knowledge and how they should seek knowledge. And he says that a student of knowledge should go through three stages. The first, when learning a particular matan or knowledge, he says, Al-awwal, he says, dirasatul masail al-asasiyya min kulli bab. That the student of knowledge learns and studies the most important issues in every chapter. And he says that the teacher should explain these issues generally without overwhelming them with information. Okay? And the teacher should explain these issues to them in a way that prepares them for the second stage. Okay? So this student, he said, تحصل له ملكة جزئية تهيئه للفهم وتحصيل مسائل الفن. So this person, this person will have malaka juz'iyya, and this person will be given a partial understanding. You won't have the full understanding, but this student will be given partial understanding. This is al-marhalatul ula. The second stage, Ibn Khaldun mentions, is that the student learns this knowledge and learns the same issues and the same mutun a second time. But this time, they delve deeper into the issues, okay? And the first instance, he says the difference between the first, al-marhalatul ula, he says in the first stage, the student basically learns this knowledge and learns one opinion. So if it's a fiqh issue, they only learn one opinion, whether it's the Hanbali opinion, the Shafi'i opinion, the Hanafi, the Maliki, they just learn one opinion, okay? And this, in the second issue, the second stage, they learn the other opinions and they learn the khilaf and the difference of opinion. And they are given maybe one dalil for each, and that's it. And on top of that, they learn the tahrir, what's known as tahrir mahall al-niza'. They learn the reason why the scholars differed, مثلا, in an issue. It could be because of a weak hadith. It could be because of their understanding of a particular verse. They just learn this. This is the stage 2. Stage 3, Ibn Khaldun says, لا يترك غويسا ولا مبهما ولا منغلقا إلا كشفا. This student now is given free rein. They are now able to absorb all of this knowledge, all of the khilaf. So the teacher basically gives them even more fawaid, because now they are at a level where they are able to absorb all of this knowledge. So these are the 3 stages that Ibn Khaldun mentions. So it's really imperative that a student of knowledge learns these 3 stages. The problem that some students have is that they learn when they listen to a sheikh or a teacher, and they're not, it's something above their level. They learn, they are basically overwhelmed with information, overwhelmed with khilaf. يعني مثلا the teacher tells them an issue, a mas'ala, and he says the scholars have differed on this issue in 4 different opinions. And then he mentions the opinion of Al-Imam Shafi'i, Al-Imam Maliki, Al-Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. And then he mentions the reason why they differed. Tahrir mahall al-niza' aw sabab al-khilaf kada wa kada. And then he mentions the dalil for every different qawl. Every qawl he mentions the dalil. And then once he mentions the dalil for every qawl, then he says, and the proponents of the first opinion refuted the proponents of the second opinion with this dalil. And then the proponents of the second opinion then refuted them back with another dalil. And then there's a niqash, there's a whole discussion just on one issue, one mas'ala. So if a beginner student of knowledge is exposed to this, yes, they will feel, and it's like a drug, they will feel, subhanallah, they are learning so much in so little time, and they will feel like they are benefiting. So this is all just a mirage and an illusion. In fact, they are not. This is very dangerous to their progress. So they will feel that for every mas'ala, this is how they should learn. And then once they learn this mas'ala like this, they will move to the second issue and learn it the same way, until they get to a time where they get too tired. They can't. They just can't. It's physically, and mentally impossible for them. If their brain and their intellect it's too hot for them to handle, basically. So then what happens is, because they are in the outsider level or the pretender level, and this is how they've learned, then they abandon knowledge. Khalas, ma nastati'. Then they leave it. They say, if this is how we're going to learn all of the issues, and this is the only way that they've been taught, then they're going to abandon knowledge and khalas, ma nastati'. But if they're taught simply just one issue, one qawl, one dalil, 30 minutes, and then they move on to the second one, and then they start finishing books like this, then they're going to think, mashallah, this is, even psychologically, they're going to say to themselves, this is simple. I can do this. Yeah. And subhanallah, this is the methodology and the tariqah of Ahlul Ilm. I know I keep mentioning this. I keep repeating the same thing. But the reason I repeat it is because it's really, really important. And I don't want you to forget this. This is very muhim jiddan. طيب, so let's move on. So here, okay, this is just for min bab taqrib lil fahm. Okay, think of this as the sun. Okay, this is the sun and it's very hot. So a student of knowledge, okay, if they're given too much information, or if this student reads too much information or absorbs too much information when they are in the beginning stages, it's too hot for them. They cannot. Okay, likewise, if they're not given enough information, it's too cold. They're still outside. You have to basically get it just right. It has to be in the middle. when you're learning يعني المسائل العلمية, the first time you learn an issue, you can't learn everything about the issue. You can't expect to ask your teacher everything that comes to your head about that issue. ما يمكن هذا. This is not how the Sahaba learned from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? Focus before you even get to asking questions. Focus on understanding what's in front of you. Once you've understood what's in front of you and you've made it your bread and butter, okay, then only then are you allowed to ask questions. How can you ask questions if you don't understand what's in front of you? Unless the questions that you're asking are about what's in front of you, the matan itself. So it's really important that you don't fall into the trap of the shaitan, because this is from the traps of the shaitan, that you absorb too much information at once. Remember what Imam al-Zuhri said, "Man rama al-ilma jumlatan, dhahaba anhu jumla." Whoever seeks knowledge and learns all at once and wants to learn everything all at once, dhahaba anhu jumla. You're going to forget everything all at once. Al-Imam Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, the author of Adwa al-Bayan, one of the scholars of our era, who passed away almost, I think now, 20 years ago or something, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was once memorizing some lines of poetry. And he spent a whole day memorizing just one line of poetry, one line. And the next day, he told his students, he said, I memorized one line of poetry. And they said, Subhanallah, Sheikh, we memorized tens of lines of poetry or 100 lines of poetry, some of them said, in one night. And you, being the Sheikh, you memorized one. And he said, مقولا, he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, I memorize so I don't forget, while you memorize to forget. So it's really important as a student of knowledge to make sure that you don't get sucked into the trap of learning too much all at once. Okay? And also at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't learn anything. And obviously you have to get the balance right. It means you only absorb the information that's in the matan. So as an example, some students, let's say they're reading a matan. Let's say they want to learn a matan from a teacher. Some of them, the mistake that they make is they have the sharh and the explanation of a scholar in front of them, and they are listening to the explanation of the teacher in front of them. So they have two explanations in front of them. Okay? And subhanAllah, they may have the explanation of Sheikh Fawzan, Sheikh Nu'thaymin, doesn't matter. Sheikh bin Baz, it doesn't really matter. But this is wrong. If you're learning from a teacher, make sure that you only have the matan in front of you. That's it. You shouldn't have an explanation in front of you, a sharh in front of you. This is wrong. هذا خطأ. Listen to the explanation of your teacher and focus on that for now. When you go home, once you've understood his explanation, then you can go back and look up other explanations, but only once you've understood what's in front of you. طيب. So I'm going to quickly summarize here the tools that a student of knowledge should have to be a student of knowledge. Okay, and this is just taken from the book by Sheikh Salih Al-Usaymi, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, Khulasatu Ta'zim Al-Ilm. Khulasatu Ta'zim Al-Ilm. Okay, and he mentions 20 principles or 20 things that a student of knowledge should have. The first being, the student of knowledge should focus on purifying the vessel. تطهير وعاء العلم, and this is the heart. The vessel here is the heart, al-qalb. Okay, so you purify your vessel, because this is the vessel that will contain knowledge. So you purify your vessel from two things, from najasatu shahawat wa najasatu shubhat, from shubhat to shahawat, desires, unlawful desires, and also misconceptions. Sincerity, ikhlas, is important when seeking knowledge. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينِ. If you're not seeking knowledge for the sake of Allah, then you shouldn't be seeking knowledge. Knowledge should only be sought for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Ahmad was asked, how do we seek knowledge for the sake of Allah? And he said, by an tanwiya raf al-jahli an nafsik, that you have the intention of removing ignorance from yourself. That's the first thing. You're doing it first and foremost for yourself. Remember, not everyone has to be there. Not everyone's aim is to become a scholar. Maybe you're just, you're a Muslim and you just want to learn the basics of your religion. Okay, just enough for you to worship Allah. This is allowed. Adi. ما في إشكال. And inshallah, Allah will raise you up amongst as one of the students of knowledge on Yawm al-Qiyamah, or from the ulama, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so your sincerity is really, really important. And you have to make sure your sincerity is to remove ignorance from yourself, first and foremost. Also, you have to have ulul himma. You have to have high aspirations. You have to focus, make sure that what you are learning is focused on understanding the Quran and the Sunnah, first and foremost. So there are two types of sciences. There are ulum al-ghaya. There are sciences that are, they are the objective in and of themselves, like al-hadith, al-fiqh, al-tafsir. Okay, and you have ulum al-ala, which are the academic tools like al-nahu, mustalah al-hadith, usul al-fiqh, usul al-tafsir. So these ulum, these sciences, these secondary sciences, which are known as academic tools, the reason why we study them is to understand the Quran and the Sunnah. So when we're studying them, we have to focus on understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. Likewise, we have to follow the right methodology. Okay, so we have to follow the right methodology. Like I mentioned, the whole lecture is about this. You have to learn to prioritize as well. So make sure that you begin with the right method for your level. Okay, make sure you prioritize. You can't learn big issues before small issues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب وبما كنتم تدرسون. كونوا ربانيين, be rabbaniyun. When you are teaching the book and when you are learning and studying the book. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Al-Alim al-Rabbani, this is a naql from Ibn Abbas, he says, Al-Alim al-Rabbani huwa alladhi yu'allimu an-nasa sighara al-ilmi qabla kibarihi. He says that the alim, the scholar who is considered to be a Rabbani, the scholar who is the nurturer, is the one who nurtures his students to learn small issues before major issues. So as a teacher, your objective is not to just teach your students everything you know about an issue. That's not your objective. Your objective and your aim and the most important thing is that you teach your students what they need to know at that time. Okay? So you have to, as a student of knowledge, you have to think of yourself as like a baby. Okay? You're like a little baby. And a baby obviously needs a bottle. Okay? The baby's mother gives, he needs a small bottle to drink milk from, right? So imagine if someone takes a jug of water and starts to feed the baby water or quench the baby's thirst from that jug of water. What's going to happen is that baby could drown, or that baby could, the water will not be able to drink the majority of that water. Okay? And it's obviously wrong. So think of knowledge like this. So as a small student of knowledge, when you're learning, you're just like a little baby. So you have to take things as they come. You have to take things and you have to prioritize and learn small issues before you learn the major issues. Some students, subhanAllah, they don't even understand the basics of hadith, mathalan, and they're arguing and debating about issues pertaining to al-jarh wa ta'dil, mathalan, as an example. They don't even know the difference between al-hadith al-sahih, al-hadith al-hasan. They don't know the maratib al-hadith. They subhanAllah, they're debating on al-jarh wa ta'dil and issues like this, subhanAllah. So as a student of knowledge, know your station, humble yourself, and prioritize. Also, eagerness to learn. You have to have a hirs ala talab al-ilm at a young age. If you're not young and you're older, that doesn't mean it's too late for you. The majority of the companions learned at in their adulthood, when they were old, above 40, subhanallah. So, but it's encouraged at to start young. You have to learn to take things step by step. You have to have patience and sabr in giving knowledge, in taking knowledge. All of this is important. You have to have patience with the harm that comes to you from your students, the harm that comes to you from your seeking of knowledge. يعني it's not easy, it's not a يعني seeking knowledge and طلب العلم, this path is not for everyone, it's difficult. You have to learn, seek knowledge in all times, whether يعني in sickness, whether you're healthy, whether you are you know, if يعني you're working or whether you're not. يعني you have to have patience and sabr, because the reward of seeking knowledge is so great, and this reward won't be given to يعني, this is a reward that Allah gives to those whom He loves. And if you're someone who's been blessed to seek knowledge, then know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala arada laka khayran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted good for you. Man yuridillahu bihi khayran, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Also, you have to adhere to the etiquettes of seeking knowledge. You have to know how to ask questions. You have to know how to sit in the sittings of the ulama and the scholars. You have to have adab talab al-ilm. You have to have the right adab and the etiquettes. Humility. This is important. Subhanallah. You know, the Salaf used to say that that al-adab or etiquettes are before knowledge itself. You have to learn etiquettes, the mannerisms of a student of knowledge before you even get to before you get to seeking knowledge. Also, number 11, you have to abstain from anything as a student of knowledge that could affect your integrity, your knowledge, the knowledge that you have. Yani not associate yourselves with people who are who have question marks over them. مثلا, you have to basically follow. You have to make sure that you protect the knowledge that you have, and that, subhanallah, that you have يعني al-muru'a, or basically as the ulama call it al-muru'a, which is basically integrity or credibility, etc. Choosing, again, we covered this, you have to choose the right friends. You have to make sure that you memorize, revise, and ask. This is really important. So memorization, revision with your friends, with the right friend, obviously, and learning to ask is also important. So you have to have humility. Don't think that you will know everything. Sometimes, you know, there could be an issue which is very difficult for you to comprehend, but your friends and your companions are able to understand this issue better than you. So you have to go and ask for help. Sometimes someone who is less advanced than you, someone who is younger than you, may have understood this issue better than you. So you have to have humility and humbleness, and you have to learn from them as well. This is why the Salaf used to say that a person will not be completely, a person will not attain the level of being a scholar or firmly grounded student without first learning from those who are above him, those who are equal to him or her, and those who are beneath them. Okay, this is really important. And subhanallah, the scholars, they use the story of the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam and the bird al-hudhud. The hudhud was a bird, and this bird said to Sulaiman, أحطت بما لم تحط به وجئتك. He said that I came, أحطت بما لم تحط به. I learned some knowledge that you basically are not aware of. And the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, he took from al-hudhud and he learned from him. So this is important. So as a student of knowledge, you have to learn from those who are younger than you as well, or maybe less advanced than you. Also, you have to learn how to respect the people of knowledge. How can you learn knowledge if you don't respect the ulama, whether they are those who are alive today or those who have passed away before? You have to learn to respect them, even in your speech. You can't say things like, subhanallah, how can Imam al-Shafi'i say this? Or how come Imam Ahmed say this? Or Imam Ahmed made a mistake in this? Or you have to make sure you watch your tongue. Even though he is not infallible and he can make a mistake, sah, technically, but using the word and speaking of scholars like this is not from the etiquettes of the student of knowledge. You can say, even if you look at the ulama that came after them, subhanallah, they would say, they would make excuses for the scholars. Shaykh al-Islam al-Taymiyyah has a risala on this. He authored a book on this. Raf'ul malam an a'immatil a'lam, he called it. Lifting the blame from the scholars. And he mentioned so many different arguments for them on why they erred in certain issues. Subhanallah. So We have to learn how to respect the people of knowledge. We have to also return back to the scholars in contemporary issues. So even as a firmly grounded student of knowledge, لا تغتر بما عندك من العلم. Never ever be self-amazed. Always look at yourself. انظر بنفسك، انظر إلى نفسك بعين الاحتقار ولا تحسن الظن بنفسك. يعني you have to, as a student of knowledge, always second guess yourself. Okay? And when I say second guess yourself, I mean in contemporary issues. Obviously, there are issues where you don't second guess yourself. We know the hukum of this. We know the hukum of the ruling on many issues. We know this is haram. We know that praying the salah mathalan is a pillar from the Islam. Obviously, we don't second guess. I'm talking about contemporary issues that we should go back to the scholars in. So we have to return back to the scholars and never say, I don't need the scholars anymore. I have reached this level. أنا لا أحتاج إليهم بل تحتاج إليهم وسنحتاج إليهم. We will always need them. Also, you have to learn how to respect your books, scholarly sittings, your books of knowledge. Don't place them on the floor. Treat them like the mushaf. Elevate them. Make sure they're clean. Make sure you don't use them as a store method for your pens and your letters from the council or something. No, use them for, make sure you treat them well and you respect them. All of these things, this is a mindset you have to get yourself into. Okay, all of these things will help you and enable you to becoming a better student of knowledge. Also, you have to, inshallah, if you reach this level, الدفاع عن العلم وأهل العلم. You have to defend knowledge. If the scholars are being attacked unjustly, obviously, you have to defend them. We have to know that, subhanAllah, these are our ulama, these are our scholars. You have to defend the sunnah of the Prophet first and foremost, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You have to convey the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nadhar Allah imra'an, as the Prophet sallallahu said, may Allah illuminate the face of a person. سمع مقالتي فوعاها وأداها كما سمعها. Someone who heard my speech and then he conveyed it as he as he or she heard it. So this is important also. Make sure you ask the right questions as well. So asking questions is a science in and of itself. Make sure you maintain your passion to continue seeking knowledge. It's very difficult sometimes to keep that passion elevated. Sometimes it happens to everyone. You will drop in your motivation to continue seeking knowledge, but you have to always just continue, even if it's little, even if it's something, and continue seeking knowledge and always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep you on that path. And lastly, but certainly not least, is make sure hifdhul waqt, you use your time effectively. Make sure that you use your time effectively and you remain efficient. Okay, so I'm going to just conclude this issue, this mas'ala, by just sharing with you examples of what a matan is. Now, just give me a second. Let me just share my other screen with you. So this is just basically an example of a matan. So here, مثلا, you have the website here, medina.com, and here we have some of the explanations of our brother Sheikh Abu Abbas Naveed Ayaz. Here he's explained مثلا Riyadh al-Salihin. Here this is the explanation of Riyadh al-Salihin. Riyadh al-Salihin is considered a book of hadith. Here he explains the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his 10 companions. Here, this is a book, an explanation of the statements of the Salah, 16 lessons, the explanation of the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, concise explanation of 4 basic texts of Aqidah. These are just examples, study of the Shahadatain. These are simple lessons that all of us can benefit from. This is another book by Sheikh bin Baz, important lessons for every Muslim. You can listen to it in 30 lessons. Explanation of Aqidah al-Raziyain. This is Nasa'ih and on milestones in the path of seeking knowledge. Umdat al-Ahkam. Some readings from Tafsir al-Sa'adi. Umdat al-Ahkam. وهكذا. So this is just one example. Okay, here if you go to ibnsabil.com, okay, if you go to ibnsabil.com, okay, you'll find courses. If you go to courses here, and if you go to al-mutun, so if you go to al-mutun, let it just load. In fact, let me just go to here while this is loading. طيب. So if you go to Al-Mutun here, this is basically an example. This is level 2. This is an example. Here you have Shurut Salah. Let me go to, if the internet is quite slow today. So anyway, while this is loading, what I'll do is I will answer some of the questions while that's loading. Let me just go back to the questions. Okay, so brother here, Akhi Harun, he said, is there any Arabic book that is there any Arabic book that you recommend a beginner student of knowledge to read without a teacher for research, iman boosting, or to generally increase your Arabic vocabulary? Even recommend it. I would recommend the Quran. Okay. Now I know what you mean by Arabic book as a book in maybe a book in vocab or nahu, but learning vocabulary without any context, it's difficult. If you want to learn Arabic vocab and build your vocabulary, then there's nothing better than the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this is what I would recommend. Okay, if we go back, I think it's finished loading. Let me just finish this. So here, I hope everyone can see my screen. Sah? Can you all see my screen? I'll take that as a yes.
we can see it, akhi.
So here, مثلا, here I am, and we are here explaining the importance of al-mutun. Okay, so it's unanimously agreed upon by the people of knowledge that the only way pure Islamic knowledge can be attained is by going back to the basics and studying as well as memorizing what is known as al-mutun al-ilmiyah. These are concise and comprehensive books or treatises that summarize a particular science. Okay, so many people think that knowledge can be attained systematically by going to just a conference once a year. This is better than nothing, or just listening to random YouTube lectures. Okay, this is khair and this is important, but remember we're talking about the end result here, and we're talking about being a student of knowledge. Okay, so here basically the curriculum here that there's level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. Okay, so level 1, if we go to level 1 here. Okay, let's see which one. So I'm gonna quickly jump to the questions while this is loading. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So can you please repeat the third stage of the student of knowledge Ibn Khaldun mentioned? Go back to the recording. It's the third stage is when he goes deeper into when a student goes deeper into seeking knowledge. Al-marhala al-thalitha. But just refer back to the recording. And that's it. I think there are no more questions. Naam. So level 1. So level 1 here, finally, alhamdulillah, loaded. Because the internet is very slow, I'm going to also load level 2 here. So level 1 basically here, khulasatu ta'zim al-ilm, glorifying knowledge, and you have important lessons for the Muslim Ummah. Also, this is an example of a matan. You have also al-qawa'id al-arba', also an example of a matan. Thalathatul usul, example of a matan. Usul al-sunnah, an example of a matan. And if, for example, you go to one of them, let's open this one, important lessons for the Muslim Ummah. Let's view this. Okay, let me read the questions while this is loading. Now, Assalamu alaikum. What are some tips from the Sunnah and from the Salaf to stay determined with studying knowledge? Because without a teacher, it can be very hard, especially if your lifestyle doesn't give you enough time to revise and memorize. It can put you off if you try, but it's still hard for you, inshallah. Inshallah, you understand what I mentioned now. Yes, I agree with you. It's very difficult for all of us, and we are all in the same boat. It's very difficult to learn without a teacher. It's very difficult, it's very hard, sah. But again, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and seek help through patience and through the prayer, the salah. Prayer can mean dua. through supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ud'uni astajib lakum. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ud'uni astajib lakum. And your Lord says, ud'uni, supplicate to me, astajib lakum. Yani I will respond to your supplication. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. If my ibad and if my servants and slaves ask you about me, then tell them I am near to them. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond and I answer the da'wah or the supplication of the one who asks me. So this is an advice, is to always constantly ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not belittle the power of dua. Even especially if it's something with talab al-ilm. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the tawfiq and success to be a successful student of knowledge, to give you a teacher, or to provide for you a teacher who will be able to teach you in accordance to the madhab of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, in accordance to this methodology. So this is really important. طيب. With that being said, you can find teachers online. Alhamdulillah, even if you are in a land where maybe you don't have a teacher, all you have to do is go to YouTube. This is exactly what I'm showing you now. You can find lessons online. Alhamdulillah, we have graduates from Al-Madinah, graduates from Jami'at Al-Imam, who alhamdulillah have lessons, online lessons now. You have مثلا our brother مثلا Abdul Wahid, he has a Medina College مثلا in London, where you can actually, I think they have online classes and they have a YouTube channel. You can learn from our brother Abu Abbas Naveed here. Like, he has lessons already recorded here. You can also learn, there's also a markaz called Al-I'tisam bis-Sunnah. They have, there's very beneficial lessons on there. You have our brother Abu Abdullah Sa'id, also Hassan, who was also a graduate from Imam Saud, who has lessons, alhamdulillah. So you can find, alhamdulillah, man jadda wajad. Whoever strives to and will, if you're sincere for the sake of Allah, you'll find those teachers, inshallah. Online, whether it's in person, you'll find a way. Allah will always find you a way, inshallah. Let me go back to this, inshallah. I'll come back to the question. So this is the important lessons for the Muslim Ummah. This is a description of this book, of this course. This is the course outline. This is what I meant when I said, as a student, you have to know the objective of what you're learning. You have to know, what is this book you're discussing? Is it a book that talks about algebra and calculus, or is it a book about tawheed? What's the book that you're learning? You can't just pick a book and say, I'm going to go to a teacher. What is it you're learning? Have a brief overview of the book. This is the whole book there. Lesson 18, all lessons there. Ihsan. The first lesson is Surah Al-Fatiha, the short surahs. 5 pillars of Islam, 6 pillars of Iman, types of Tawheed, types of Shirk, Al-Ihsan, conditions of prayer. So you'll have a bird's eye view of the book before you even begin. This is the course objective. The objective of the course is this, the objective of the book. So these are objectives that we just put, but you have to know your objectives, okay? You have to understand each lesson, memorize it, at least one evidence for each. This is something that anyone can do, inshallah, okay? These are the questions that you should be able to answer, okay, after you listen to the audio of the book. This is the book there, okay? You can download the book there. And there you go, the explanation of the book in 5 parts there, okay? Get through these. This is just one example, you don't have to come to this. I'm not saying that seeking knowledge can be found here and nowhere else. Alhamdulillah, fadlullah wasi'. Maybe there are other better organized places, but this is just an example, brothers and sisters, that you can, this is level, so that was level 1. I hope level 2 has loaded. Alhamdulillah, it has. Level 2 here, you have مثلا fiqh al-tahara. This is incomplete. Inshallah, we hope to complete this soon. You have shurut al-salah, the conditions of the prayer, the concise biography of the Prophet ﷺ. This is all free, by the way. This is no charge. You can just come to this and in the comfort of your own home, listen to this. This is an explanation of al-Bayquniyya. This is an explanation of Ba'un al-Nawiyya. This is incomplete yet, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully one day someone will complete this. And we have here Aqeedat al-Raziyayn wa hakadha. This is just an example. Let me go back to the questions. Similar question, best way to learn Best way to learn Arabic for someone who's not, so best way to learn Arabic for someone who's not a beginner but did GCSE Arabic. So, wallahi, there is no best way. The way that I've just mentioned now is the best way, a method. Yani, it's very difficult to give a blanket answer to this, but what I would say is begin, if you have a good level of Arabic anyway, or you have GCSE Arabic, then inshallah, maybe you are at a level where you can start with Al-Ajurramiyya. Okay, Ajurumiyya is something that is being taught now, alhamdulillah. You can learn Ajurumiyya. Our brother Abu Aisha in Al-Atsam bis-Sunnah, he teaches that now. Also, Dawood also teaches this. Abu Yusuf from, also, there's in Medina College. You can find, alhamdulillah, many places where you can learn Arabic grammar and Ajurumiyya, inshallah. The next question, at someone's beginning stage, should a student study every day for like 2 to 3 hours, or do you think that's too much at the beginning? No, I would say, Akhi, that it's not about the number of hours, but more about how much you can learn in an hour. So for example, let me give you an example. Okay, when some of us were starting to learn and in Medina, we would time ourselves on how many pages we are able to read and interpret and understand in 1 hour, مثلا. So at first, مثلا, it was difficult. It was maybe half a page, and then it became a page, and then it became 3, and then it became 5, and then it became 10. هكذا. So it's like you're building, you're training yourself. So it's at first for you to sit down and read a book for 3 hours. It could be difficult for you. You have to be tadarruj. You have to take it in stages. If you're not accustomed to this, it's difficult for you. Even if it's anything, even if it's something you enjoy, maybe 3 hours is too much. So maybe at first to start with 30 minutes every day. إن الله يحب إن الله أحب الأعمال إلى الله ما داوم إليه العبد أو ما داوم عليه العبد وإن قل. The most beloved of actions in the sight of Allah, as the hadith mentions, is that which the person is consistent in, even if it's small. So 30 minutes, start with that, and then see how you get on. And then 1 hour, and then 2, and inshallah you'll get to a stage where you can read every day for 3 hours. But every day you have to be also realistic, brothers and sisters. You have other commitments in your life, okay? You may be a student who's at university, who's got to hand in essays and assignments. You could be a person who has a job, 9 to 5 job, okay? And you're knackered, or you're finished, khalas, you're tired when you come back home afterwards. You have to be very realistic, okay? So it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Okay, that's really important. How would one know the best methodology in seeking knowledge if they have no teachers around them, or if they do not have access to an institute? By listening to this lecture again. The whole purpose of this lecture is your question here. That's how you know. Now you know the best methodology in seeking knowledge, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. What about books for reading for motivation and research? Would you recommend a beginner student of knowledge to do this? Depends on the book you're reading. And it depends, what book are you? This is a very vague question. I don't really understand. Saad, how important do you think it is to learn tajweed? Because without basic knowledge of reading Arabic, correct? Yes, tajweed is very important. Of course, we all have to learn tajweed to be able to read the Quran. We need to know our ghunna from. We need to know your idhar from your ghunna. You have to know your tajweed, of course. You have to know how to recite But if you are someone who learned the Quran from a teacher, and although you haven't read a book of tajweed, but you apply the rules of tajweed just by learning from a teacher, then this is, inshallah ta'ala, this is good. This is sufficient. Although it's also good for you to learn a book of tajweed. Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What would you advise someone who feels extremely insincere in everything they do and wants to give up on studying? I advise them to not give up on studying because they feel insincere, but rather to strive to be sincere for the sake of Allah. Okay, that's what I would advise them to do. And giving up on studying shouldn't be an option. Okay, but giving up in sincerity is obligatory upon you. So this is really important. And sincerity is something that requires you striving. You have to also come with the asbab. Don't place yourself in situations where you feel insincere by spreading and propagating your worship and your ibadat. Don't propagate what books you read. Don't propagate that you are a student of knowledge. You don't need people. يعني Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وقل اعملوا. Allah says وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله. And say اعملوا, do righteous actions. فسيرى الله عملكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see your actions. ورسوله والمؤمنون. طيب, so this is important. I've seen a lot of local students quoting Quran hadith without the correct articulation. There's a huge compromise they are making because they just changed the words. طيب, so this is a suggestion and this is an advice and not a question. نعم, صح, agreed. Should you completely understand a mutun before moving on to the next one? Yes, you should completely is difficult. يعني, you should at least complete that matan and get to at least 10% understanding. Okay, 10% understanding. It's like a combing process. Okay, you read مثلا, if we use this as an example, yeah, this is the important lessons for the Muslim Ummah. So مثلا, you read the matan, okay, I hope the internet is better now. نعم, alhamdulillah. الدروس, so this is the matan, right? Okay, so this is in Arabic. Oh, okay, so يعني, you have to be able to read Arabic for you to read this, obviously. But let's say this was in English. You read it quickly, all of it. Okay, not quickly, but understand it. يعني. Have a good picture the actual matan in its entirety. Listen to the lectures. Once you've listened to the lectures, maybe you'll accumulate and understand 10%. And then the next time it will be 20%. And هكذا and so on and so forth. Sheikh bin Baz taught this more than 100 times. Kitab al-Tawheed, he taught it more than 100 times. وهكذا. نعم, where was I? I can't see the questions of others. Yes, you're not supposed to. جزاك الله خير. نعم. وياك أخي. Can you give a practical example on how to study fiqh to an intermediate level? نعم, the example that Ibn Khaldun mentioned. Remember Ibn Khaldun's example? So when you're learning a mas'ala, an issue, remember you have to, where is it? Can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation? تشوفون؟ نعم, لا بأس. طيب, so when you're learning a mas'ala or an issue, you have to, once you've learned the mas'ala or the issue, you have to, how do you check for your understanding? How do you check whether you've understood something? So the best way to check whether you've understood something is by explaining the issue again to yourself without reverting back to the book. So you explain it to yourself without going back to the book. Okay, that's how you. So let's say now we are learning Surah Al-Fatiha, the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha, and we learn Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We learn Alhamdu مثلا هو وصف المحمود بالكمال مع المحبة والتعظيم. We learn al هنا للاستغراق الجنس. We learn الفرق بين الحمد والمدح والثناء مثلا. And then we learn Allah ما هو معنى لفظ الجلالة ذو الألوهية وهكذا. And then we learn رب العالمين. So once we learn this in the book, if you're able to repeat this, يعني maybe not at the same level, but you understand يعني 15, 20, 30, يعني you're able to repeat this issue, then you've understood. Then you're at the intermediate level, inshallah. Okay? Then you are at the intermediate level. The next question, I'm pursuing online education. How can we evaluate if our learning is correct? Because we are not directly in contact with Mashayikh in online education. Just like I mentioned, if you're able to go to re-explain something in your own words properly, then you've understood. Whether it's a tafsir of a surah, whether it's a fiqh issue, whether it's the explanation of a hadith, مثلا, وهكذا. So as a student of knowledge, you're a student of knowledge now. Sometimes, مثلا, what could happen is you could be in a masjid and the khatib doesn't turn up. The khatib doesn't turn up. Jum'ah, it could be salat, everyone's waiting for salat al-Jum'ah it's 1:25. يعني usually in the UK, Salatul Jum'ah is about 1:15, 1:30, depending on the season. And he doesn't show up. And people look at you and say, oh, so-and-so is known for seeking knowledge, because people will know. So you have to be able to have something prepared. Okay, you have to have something prepared. So you have to, is this just my screen or everyone's screen, by the way? The screen is jittery. Right. So you have to, Naam. So we only have a few minutes and I'm going to stop here, inshallah. So you have to be able to explain a hadith, مثلا, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, or a verse or a Qur'ani, or La ilaha illallah. You have to have some knowledge. Yani, that's how you know you're at a good level of ilm. Yani. Also, will sessions, classes, lectures as such continue, inshallah, from now, once in a week? Yes, inshallah, they'll continue. To add to my last question, should someone master level 1? Yes, they should master level 1 before mastering level 2. Like Sir Ahmed, this is in regards to first. Naam. May Allah praise. Naam. I mean, naam. Can everyone see the website, ibnsabil.com?
No.
You can see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, someone said they can. Okay. Please tell the people to make dua in this one. Naam. Yes, Jazakallah khair. So this is the final hour for those of you who are in the UK, in this time zone. It's the final hour before Maghrib. So yes, يعني, inshallah ta'ala, we should all make dua individually after this lesson, inshallah. جزاك الله خير. هل شرط تعلم اللغة العربية أولا حتى تستطيع طلب العلم؟ نعم يا أخي. نعم. يعني اللغة، يعني تعلم اللغة العربية هو من أساسيات طلب العلم. طالب العلم بلا لغة العربية كالرجل الأعرج. I just found a compilation, some videos of Ustad Abdul Rahman Hassan teaching Al-Ajrumiyya. Naam, yes, Ustad Abdul Rahman Hassan also benefit from him, inshallah. He teaches Ajrumiyya. I feel, naam. If some videos are not uploaded for all lessons, please look for, naam. How should beginner students of knowledge behave when they come across different views? They just stick to one view? Naam, just one view. If you're a beginner student of knowledge and you're learning for the first time in a matan, just stick with one view. Do you provide exams on this website? The exams are there. It's just they're just basic questions really for you, just to have some guideline. You can memorize a text or a poem, both. So this is, do you recommend memorizing a text or the poem from a matan? And that's the end of the questions. طيب يا إخوتي وأخواتي جزاكم الله خيرا. نسأل الله تعالى أن يجعلنا من عباده الصالحين وأن يرزقنا الإخلاص في الطلب. We ask Allah to make us sincere in seeking knowledge, to make us of His righteous ibad and His righteous slaves. وجزاكم الله خيرا for attending. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.